All right, so today I want to talk about preparing for a long-term power outage. And I've actually done a video on this before, except we specifically looked at short-term solutions to the power going out. And let me tell you, if the power goes out for more than 2 or 3 days and you don't know when the power's coming back on, it's a completely different story. And it's kind of interesting because I look back at Hurricane Helene survivors. And that was a completely different scenario. And I'd say probably 99% of everyone lost all their food in their freezer and all their food in their refrigerator. And in addition to that, they were actually cut off from society because the hurricane came through, blew down almost every single tree, which knocked down every single power line, and they shut off the natural gas. So you had these isolated communities stuck in the middle of nowhere, completely isolated from everyone for, it was weeks and weeks. And that was interesting to hear the stories on how some people survived. And kind of what I found really fascinating and captivating about some of those stories is I specifically saw one guy who was living by himself in a little cabin, had a wood stove, no phone, no computer, it's just minimal electricity, no freezer and no fridge. He's living off of canned food. And when he was interviewed, he's like, yeah, it's no big difference to me. I just have to light a few candles, which is pretty amazing. He was like one of the few people it didn't really affect. And me here up in the mountains of Colorado, we actually had a power outage about 4 weeks ago, where not only did my power go out for 3 days, but it also brought in a severe windstorm that actually knocked a couple trees down, full-size pine trees. We had winds of like 100 miles an hour, which is pretty crazy. And, I was thinking about that. I was thinking, it wouldn't have taken much more wind to knock down a lot of trees and knocked down all the power lines and completely isolated me up here from society. And a lot of people, they have chainsaws and they're trying to cut their way out with chainsaws, just trying to clear the road, which takes weeks sometimes, especially if every single tree is knocked over. And one of my plans ever since I moved up here in the mountains about 20 years ago was to have pretty much an emergency plan for 30 days without power. And that system has changed a lot as I've moved through the years. Let me tell you, I see different videos and different things coming up. And I went from like a small gas generator to a really big gas generator and ended up with a hybrid system with some batteries, some solar panels, and a gas generator. And let me tell you, when we had that power outage about 3 weeks ago, it tested my systems, and a lot of my systems actually failed. So what I want to do today is I'm going to go through all my emergency backup systems. I'm going to take you through one by one, show you some of the interesting upgrades that I made to these systems. I'm going to show you where they failed and how I burned stuff up in the process in some cases, and how I plan to make some changes moving forward. All right, so I'm down here in my basement, and this is what I consider to be probably one of the biggest failures of my last power outage. This is my Bluetti AC200L power station. I have a couple of B300K batteries on the bottom, and this is about 7,200 watts of batteries. And my plan is this is actually powering all my freezers in my garage, and in an emergency, it powers the refrigerator. I have 9 full-size freezers. And the problem is I'm bringing in solar, but I'm not bringing in enough solar to keep the freezers going through the night. So my plan was to use the AC cord in the back, plug it into this outlet right here, and run it up to the gas generators through an outlet in the wall. And the problem is you watch the YouTube videos, you can watch a lot of YouTube videos, and a lot of them kind of mislead you, because I plugged in every single one of my gas generators and none of them would charge this. There was multiple errors on the Bluetti. I had some errors, and then my generators, my main inverter generator with pure sine wave just would immediately go into limp mode. So what I did is I hooked up this mass of wires in here. It took me forever to figure this out, up to this DC power supply. So essentially what this is now I can run from my generators up to my DC power supply, and then I'm running down, let's see, this whole mess of wires. So I'm going through some diodes, these big old diodes that keep the solar separate from the DC generator. Also have an inline fuse down here, a big inline fuse, 30 amp. running through a splitter, and I'm splitting them into the solar output of the AC200L, and that's been working great. When I first hooked it up, I was getting really bad buzzing on my Bluetti. I was like, what in the world's going on? That took me a while to figure out. And apparently on the DC power supply, when you're running DC into the Bluetti, if you keep these wires loose, untwisted, they act as a kind of like an antenna, and they pick up interference. I also added some of these iron, they're like Ferrite clips, and I added a bunch of them up here, and then I added a bunch down on the bottom, down here, these Ferrite clips, and that eliminates the buzzing, and it doesn't buzz at all, which is amazing. That took me a while to figure out. The other thing I didn't take into account is that my gas generators are less efficient up here at 9,000 feet. So I'm losing 32% of the power that I can make from my gas generators. So I can't really run what I thought I was going to be able to run. Then I have this little gadget here. This is, it's a loss of power alarm that goes through my Wi-Fi. So if I lose my AC through here, that actually buzzes my phone, which is pretty cool. And it also starts screeching really loud in here. So if you're at home, you can hear it screeching. And then if I'm on the road, I can actually get a little, like a notification that my power went out. Another problem I had with this is, since I'm running, I'm actually running 8 freezers now because I took one down. I consolidated one. I'm trying to reduce the power. Is you can't plug all the freezers in at the same time because the surge is too much. And essentially what would happen is this thing would randomly shut off. I could not figure it out. I'm still trying to figure it out. I think it was because I was maxing out the solar input. And then when I was getting a surge from the compressors with a maximum solar input, it would just shut off the AC with no airs. That's a problem I'm still kind of dealing with. So I reconfigured my solar panels so I get about 1,150 watts coming in instead of 1,200. And it's happened once in the last 2 weeks where it just randomly shuts the AC off. But the problem is when the AC shuts off, going to the freezers, this one goes to all the freezers, I have to actually go out. I used to have to go out and unplug every single freezer and then plug them back in one at a time because of the cold start surge on all those. And I've actually figured that problem out too. So let's go out to the freezers and I'll kind of show you what I did over there. All right, so I have some upright freezers and some chest freezers. I have 8 of them scattered throughout the garage. This is when I unplugged. I kind of consolidated this small little chest freezer. But this is this is my madness right here. And essentially what I did is I took every freezer and I put a splitter on it. So this is coming from the solar power right here, coming in through the solar, splitting out into 2 freezer outlets here. And then on each outlet, I have it's a surge protector that has a timer, a time delay start. That is a lifesaver. I can only find one on Amazon it goes from like 1 to 999 seconds. So I set everyone at, let's see, this one is 6 minutes. So every 1 minute, a freezer will come on and it'll kind of equilibrate. And then I have it split off again here. This one goes to the freezer, and then this one goes to, this is actually loss of power alarm, really super loud alarm. So when the power goes out, all these alarms, all 8 of them start screaming really loud. And then one at a time, these will kick on every 1 minute and the alarm will go off and the freezer will power. And it's been working flawlessly so far. The only thing is I have a whole bunch of cords and wires and everything. I'm thinking about putting it in some kind of like a metal box on the wall or something for each freezer to organize it. But what's really cool about this is if the power goes out and remotely, like say I'm out of town and I get the notification that my AC turned off on my Bluetti from some weird glitch, I could just restart it right on my Bluetti app. And it'll cycle through all the freezer starts one at a time, and it'll start them all versus, you know, because I actually tried starting 3 freezers at the same time and it wouldn't work. So this way I can start all 8 freezers and it's working perfectly. One more thing, I'm always running on solar. It's on my 1-minute delay freezer start is the garage door opener. So if the power goes out and I restart it, I can have a garage door opener working so I can actually get in. But I wanted to show you my solar panels. This is kind of my experimental solar panels setup. And I've had this in so many configurations. And during the storm, the windstorm that we had, these actually blew over and got completely crushed. And 2 panels had the wires pulled out. And whew, it's getting cold out here. And 1 panel completely broke the glass. I just threw that one out. It was basically not salvageable. And I actually have 18 panels here. I'm currently running 16 on the Bluetti. So this is 4 strings of 4 panels. Now the recent addition I added was a combiner box. Let me tell you, you definitely need a combiner box. What a combiner box is it takes all your strings of panels, puts all the positive in one bus bar, and runs, basically it's like a parallel box is what it is. It runs them all in parallel. And I wanted one with circuit breakers on each string. So we have 4 strings of 4 panels right here. And then I have a main breaker right here. The other thing I found out is if I'm running the DC power supply, it won't run at the same time that even we're getting a little solar. So if I'm getting, you know, even some voltage of solar, I can't run the DC power supply. So if I wanted to run that, I'd have to come out here, turn this off if the sun was still out, which is kind of weird. Kind of weird. That just snaps right in. It's pretty nice. And I've rewired these panels so many times. I have these 2 that I'm not using right here at the end because they get mostly shade, but the other ones I'm running. So basically in series, you're running positive to negative, 4 panels in a row, and then you run them in here. So this is like one series of 4 panels that runs into my combiner box, and I have multiple strings. The one in the front there, the 3 panels are actually hooked to one of these panels, so that's the 4 there. The other thing that I struggled with too is when the wind blew these over in that big windstorm, I got out here and the crazy wind pulled them back over with my ATV, and you can see some of my frames are kind of bent. It pretty much wiped out my structural integrity on a lot of these. I'm gonna have to go through and put some boards on and straighten them up and add some more support. But when they first got knocked over, I came out here and put sandbags on each corner, on all 4 corners. Basically, I put them right on the ground, tied a string up to here, and tried to stabilize them that way. The next day, even with the sandbags, they got knocked over again, and I lost some more cords. The cords got ripped out. That's basically what happened is like, I kind of wired them a little bit different now, but like the cord would like come off of the wire right here. The connector would come off of the wire on some of them, and then some of them pulled right out of the connection up on the solar panel. And I had to resolder those to get those up. So then in the middle of the storm, what I actually did is I took all my solar panels and I tied them to these trees. I tied these ropes to the trees in the back here. And then in the front, what I did is I took these strings over here and I brought out my ATV. I have a Grizzly 600 ATV, and I tied them to the bumper of my ATV. I was trying to hold them down. And then I put sandbags on these, and that seemed to get me through the worst of the storm. And then since then, I put in some big metal rebar spikes to hold them down. And these spikes were only like 13-inch spikes. I was thinking, man, maybe I should have got like some 3-foot rebar spikes and pounded them way in. So that's kind of the plan there. And then another plan is to probably combine these two last panels together, run another line in the house, and probably charge some portable solar generators. We have some smaller ones that in an emergency we can run them in and charge them that way. But that is my setup there. So what I want to do, since the sun's going down, is I want to show you this DC power supply in action. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn that off. That's the main power. So no power is going to my Bluetti now when I shut that off. All right, so here are my 5 gas generators. And this is one of my newer ones I bought a couple years ago. Thinking, I could just take this and plug it into the house and run the whole house on this generator, because it actually has a 50 amp plug right there. And the problem is, if you ran that nonstop for a whole month, 24/7, it would take 1,100 gallons of gas. That is 20 55-gallon drums of gasoline. And I figured out, in order to buy the gasoline and the pump and the bells and everything, it would cost $6,000 just for the gasoline for that thing, which is kind of crazy. So I plugged this one into my generator and into the Bluetti, and I got an error that said the frequency was wrong. So it was coming out at 65 hertz, and the maximum on the Bluetti was like 63.8 or something hertz. So that one was out. That one was out. Then I have this one that I've had for probably 20 years. And this thing's a workhorse. It's had some leaks over the years, just kind of fixed a leak on the carburetor, fixed a dry rotted gas line. But it's a 4,000 watt, hooked it up to the Bluetti, and I was getting a oscillating voltage error, which who knows what was going on with that. And then I got this one specifically for, let's see. No, it was actually this one. This one was specifically for the Bluetti. Bought this a couple years ago. It's an inverter generator, pure sine wave, and it would just go into limp mode. And then I was talking to Bluetti, and they were saying, yeah, on this one, you could actually try one of those plugs. It's just a little plug that plugs right into the AC here, and it converts it from a floating ground to a bonded ground. And I was like, yeah, I figured it out, and I bought one of those plugs, and it still didn't work. I wouldn't charge the Bluetti. And then I bought this one, thinking, yeah, there's something wrong with that generator. But this one was another inverter generator, and I didn't realize that this one is modified sine wave that the Bluetti will not take. So that one was out. And then in the middle of the storm, I'm like trying all these. The wind's blowing, the trees are falling. I'm in the middle of the dark trying to get the Bluetti going. So I start this one. This is a little 800 watt. And I've used this for years and years and years. I used to hook this up to my enclosed trailer when I was moving hay, and I had a big fan in there, and it would suck all the hay dust out while I was loading it. And this one actually worked with the Bluetti, and I was like, yes, I could charge it. And I could charge it like 500 watts. And then I started it up, let it run a few minutes, was kind of playing around with my app, and I looked up, and that thing started belching out big black plumes of smoke. I think the rings are shot on that thing or something since it's so old. So that one was out, and I had all these generators, and I couldn't power the Bluetti. So I was thinking, what do I do now? So what I did is I decided, all right, this is my biggest one. This should run all my freezers, right? So took all my freezers, plugged it into this outlet. It didn't work. I was like, that's odd. So I plugged it into this one, and it did work. And I think what happened is when I plugged it into this one, it tried to pull I actually had 9 freezers at the time, and my refrigerator. So it's 10 appliances, a cold start surge through this. And I think I just burned this out from the cold start surge. It even was too much for the breaker. And that's when I realized I need to fix these freezers so they come on one at a time. I also got another a plug-in here that's a 30 amp that has a little bit more capacity that that converts to 110, 120. So I can actually use that too to get a little more surge power out of it. But yeah, I could run that. So I could run that for about a day and a half, and it would use all my gasoline. Versus now with the DC inverter, I can actually run this one over here. This is a 2500 watt. This is like my main one, the newest one I just bought. Easy to start. It takes about a little over a gallon. It'll run like 5 hours on a gallon, and it'll charge my Bluetti enough through the night to get me through to the next day. So this is 1 gallon a day with my setup. This is like 1.5 gallons an hour drinking down like gosh. So that's the difference between all my generators. All right, so I wanted to show you how this DC power supply works. So that's my generator. It's running over there. It must be 10 degrees below zero, and it started on the first pull. Running the line over here. Over to here. This is where I put my little plug right here. Grab this. Put it right in here. It goes right to my DC power supply. All right, so that generator's coming in through here, going up to the DC power supply AC input. And this is 100% powered by the generator. And the cool thing is you can change the current, which is the amps. You can change it up or down. And come over here, bring it up. You dial it in exactly where you want it, down to the 100th of amp. You can also come over here and change the volts. I always leave it on 80 volts. So basically what you do is you just hit out. And what that'll do is you can see now there's nothing coming in. And if you hit the out button right here, hopefully it'll work. Yeah. Takes a little bit, kind of ramps up. And there we're getting 47 watts input through the solar. And I've done extensive testing with all these generators for hours and hours on each generator, and they all work, every single one. Now I can use any generator to charge my Bluetti. If we want to crank it up, let's go to like, let's see. We'll go to like, we'll go to 10 amps, 80 volts. It takes a minute to kick in. We'll see what we get over here. Put in 738. I can turn it up here. 11 amps. We'll go to 12 amps. So, let's see. Takes a minute to kick in. If you go too high on some of these generators, it'll actually choke it out and it'll kill it. So we're at about 900. Let's go up to 13 amps. I figure I can go to about 1,000 watts. Is pretty much the sweet spot for this generator. This is my main gas generator, and I can just dial it in as precisely and get 1,000 watts going in, which is pretty awesome. So another thing I wanted to show you is my water setup. This is here in my basement. I got a couple 50-gallon drums of water, and this is the bomb right here. This is what I got set up for the water. This is a portable well pump. I think I paid like $300 for it. And this is actually a pressure tank. So this actually pressurizes the tank, and then it runs off the pressurized tank until it runs down to a certain pressure, and then the pump comes back on, so it doesn't always run. I can run this over to the Bluetti, and I actually take this. So I have some hoses in here that I can run over to my my washing machine cold water input, and it pressurizes the whole house and we have running water, which is pretty cool that we actually have running water during a power outage. All right, so I have a few more things I want to show you. This is how we make drinking water. So all the water we drink runs through this filter. We collect them in these 5-gallon carboys. And this, essentially what this is, it's a carbon filter, reverse osmosis, particulate filter, and then at the end, the very last cartridge adds minerals like alkaline minerals back into the drinking water. You can never, I'm a chemist. You can never trust water. I tell you, you can't really do tests enough to test everything in your water. And then this is what I use to test the water. This is a hardness meter. And then this is the water coming out. We are at 11 ppm for hardness. If you look on the back, ideal drinking water is 0 to 50. And we can actually look at this. This is what's coming out on this side. So you have wastewater, and this is red. Red. Let's see. This is coming out at like 112, which is crazy. 118. So that's really hard water. And our tap water is a little less than that. It's over the hard water into where you don't want to drink water. And the other thing I found out, which is kind of wild, is we have radon in the house. It's a gas that's like radioactive, and we have a radon evacuation system. And the radon comes from uranium, and this actually catches uranium. I came over here with my Geiger counter, and this thing is actually pretty hot. It's radioactive, pulling the uranium out of the drinking water. And if you had never known that, most labs, when you go to test the water, they don't test for uranium in your water, anything radioactive. So this thing has saved us for sure. So I wanted to show you this over in our living room. We actually have this big cabinet right here that we started putting power outage supplies in, surrounded by all of our water, which is pretty cool. We have these water racks. We just actually got these racks. The lids tend to leak. So we definitely need some new lids on those. And in this big, huge thing right here, it's a big cabinet. Let's see what we have. These were essential during a power outage. So these are like little rechargeable lanterns. And after the third day, we were like hoping we had more of these. So after the 3-day power outage, we actually bought some more. These charge through a D cell battery, rechargeable D cell. So we got some rechargeable Ds. We actually went to candles for a while, but the problem is they use up the oxygen. You can kind of feel it in your throat when you're breathing in that air that doesn't have enough oxygen in it. So, and then when you blow them out, they really smell up the place. I have a little lighter here that I use to start the wood stove. That thing is awesome. Cool little lighter. If you're wondering how I heat the snake room, I heated the snake room with this little buddy heater. And this buddy heater actually has rechargeable, refillable propane containers over here, which is pretty awesome. And I was refilling those containers I was swapping them out every 3 hours. And then I also had a carbon monoxide detector so I could check on that. Have a little Bluetti power station down here. This is so old. I think this is like 20 years old or something like this. Charges really slow. It's really loud when it charges. But we use this to run the Starlink. We put it outside with the Starlink. And these will actually run in the really cold weather. They just won't charge when it's cold. So you have to bring it in and warm it up in order to start charging it. And then we have, in here, we have a Jackery. I guess I didn't pull this out. This is a Jackery Explorer 1500. It's another solar generator Jackery. We actually use this to power the microwave and the popcorn maker, which is pretty cool. And then we ran a cord from this over to our computer and our speakers and we could pop popcorn. We could watch movies. We had the internet from the Starlink. Yeah, we were pretty set. So this is our wood stove that we've been running pretty much nonstop during the power outage. As a matter of fact, I usually run it in the morning and then in the evening. It's actually made of soapstone. The whole stove is made of stone. Heats up really slow, but it keeps the heat in for a really long time, and saves a lot on electricity and natural gas. We actually have natural gas up here. So a couple other things. We have wood. We chop all our own wood from our trees around the property. Usually use down trees. And over here by the barn, I can kind of show you, we have a wood splitter, which is a lifesaver. I have a whole bunch of chainsaws, a wood splitter, and probably once a week I'm out here cutting wood and splitting wood. And whew, it is cold out here. It is super cold. I actually just got a new cover for it, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it's just a log splitter. This is actually a 27-ton Troy built. So that thing has been working some wood. Look at that big old pile of wood. A little bit of wood there, some gas. I have some big old rounds that are mostly rotten that I'm trying to let dry out to see if I can actually recover them. But yeah, I need to split some more wood. Definitely want to store up some wood for the storm. All right, so here's one thing that's an absolute necessity if you use a buddy heater in your snake room or any other place in your house during an emergency, because propane heaters put off carbon monoxide, and this one will actually detect down to 1 ppm of carbon monoxide, which is pretty awesome. Like your standard carbon monoxide detectors in your house, they won't go off until it's like lethal levels. So you want to keep it below 5 ppm. That's kind of the key. So what I did is I put this right on the snake rack up here. It has a little magnetic mount. Put it on the snake rack, and you can actually mute it here. And it'll go down to, well, it's at 0 now, but when I had the buddy heater like right in the middle of my room, like right in here, and right above the buddy heater, I was getting about 3 ppm of carbon monoxide. Then over here on the rack, about 1 ppm. And then the problem is with the door closed, it was actually increasing more and more carbon monoxide in here. It was getting above 5. So I opened the door to the basement, and of course that lets the cold air in at first, but eventually this will warm up the snake room and the entire basement. Another thing I did is I put a thermometer up on the top up there to make sure the temperature was right, and it was right at 91 degrees on top, which is perfect for ball pythons. With the buddy heater in here and the carbon monoxide and the door wide open, I tried to crack the door just a little bit, and then a little bit further and a little bit further. Finally, I just had to open it all the way, and then everything stabilized. We were like at 1 to 2 ppm, I'd say, in here. Yeah, we're at 0 because there's nothing going on now. But that is definitely what you need if you're running a buddy heater. All right, so I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, hey, Chris, why do you have 9 freezers in your garage? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I actually raise Black Angus cattle up here in the mountains of Colorado. And just until recently, I actually had quite a few cows, and now I'm down to just 1 cow. And that's why all my freezers are actually full of beef. And as I consume the beef month after month, year after year, I slowly pull those freezers off of the system. And as a matter of fact, I should get to a point where I can run just a minimal amount of freezers on just the batteries and the solar without the need for the gas generator, which would be pretty cool. So I wanted to give you an update on my ball python YouTube channel here on YouTube. I put out a live stream, I think it was about a month ago, and a company reached out to me called Rare Genetics. And they actually take a small piece of shed from your snake, and from that shed that you send in, they can actually test over 60 genes in your ball python, which is basically a game changer. I can't believe they can actually do over 60 genes. I think 3 years ago when I stopped doing YouTube, it was only like 5 or 6 genes or something like that. Now it's it makes a lot of these complicated projects really easy if you do genetic testing, which is pretty amazing. I'll definitely be using their services a lot from here on out. And I also partnered with Rodent Pro, and they gave me a 10% coupon code down in the description of this video. You can go down there and check it out. I'll also put some affiliate links down there, Amazon affiliate links, to some of the stuff that I mentioned in the video. And I also posted some snakes over on Morphmarket. I am completely revamping my collection, and I posted quite a few snakes, sold quite a few already. So if you're in the market for some ball pythons or a super dwarf retic, I still have a few of those. I posted one over there and it sold like right away. So I'll probably post a few more, just kind of sneak them in here and there over the few weeks and months down the road. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.